is, then I think in my dictionary, in my vocabulary, I think Mr. Bhaskar, Dr. Bhaskar Chatterjee would be my ultimate travel destination each time. He is a person you can learn a lot from. Every word of his is measured, and every word of him bears so much value and so much wisdom. Everybody, please put your hands together as Dr. Bhaskar Chatterjee addresses this evening as the Chief Guest.
Thank you, Ruchika, for those very kind words. You never seem to run out of new and innovative ways of putting your thoughts across. My heartiest appreciation for that. President of Greentech, Mr. Kamleshwar Saran, distinguished delegates to this conference, ladies and gentlemen. Somehow the years do fly by. It was not so long ago that I had my very first interaction, which you saw. It was captured here in the film that you saw when I was in Goa, and that was the very first time that I interacted with Greentech and had the pleasure of associating myself with that HR event. Since then, I have seen this organization grow and develop and prosper and diversify many of its activities, and I must congratulate not only Mr. Saran, but his entire team for being so dedicated in what they do and for being so innovative in the way they have come across with new ideas that have been put forward and that have been of great value to the organizations who have interacted with Greentech. There are these three particular pillars that Greentech associates itself with, and you saw all of those exhibited in this film. But this particular one about fire safety and security is perhaps a brand name that Greentech has built up over 11 years, successively with unerring metronomic regularity. They have inspired people in an area that is not often a very glamorous one. And yet, when disaster strikes, when something out of the way happens, then everyone remembers, did we actually take enough protective measures? The one alarming thing that comes to mind, and there are so many disasters across India and across the entire world, but the recent fire in the Maharashtra capital, Mumbai, the very heart of the administration and government, the very pillar of governance, was subjected to such an appalling tragedy. And people were, of course, entitled to ask that if measures were not taken to protect even the very seat of administration and governance, then what can we expect from the rest of the organizations? And that is indeed true. Very often there is a set of complacencies that set in. Organizations always believe that such a disaster will not take place, or at least in my time it will not take place, or at least in the near future it will not take place. And therefore, like ostriches in the sand, we bury our head and hope that even if disaster does come, it will pass over our heads and maybe we won't even have to tackle it. And this avoidance policy, the inability to understand that when catharsis or when crises actually strike, they come without warning. It's like a clap of thunder. And the recipient doesn't even know from where it has emerged, where it has emanated. And the unawareness, the complacence, the inability, the lack of safety audits, the lack of security measures, and above all, the inability to act as a sentinel, to lower our levels of alertness, that is what brings disaster upon us. We saw not only 9/11, We saw 26/11. And yet, we understand that there are countries which have kept their alertness levels so high that not even a single breach is tolerated. What you call a zero tolerance policy. We may feel bad that our great icon Shah Rukh Khan is detained at the US airport. And because of the iconic place he has in our psyches and in our mindsets, we tend to believe, is that a discrimination against an iconic Indian? But if you look at it in another way, that zero tolerance policy scans every single human being entering that great nation. It doesn't matter whether it's Abdul Kalam, it doesn't matter whether it's Shah Rukh Khan, it doesn't matter who enters the United States. You will never ever escape the scanner that they have. I myself, in my last 2 trips to the US, have been detained each time. Why? Because in a visit to the United States in the year 2004, I lost my passport on an aircraft. I had that passport renewed by the Indian Embassy because my own batchmate was the Indian ambassador. But every time I go, invariably, inevitably, their computer strikes my name and puts an alarm signal. And I am always subjected to a second check and a second verification. With all politeness, this time I even missed my flight from Atlanta to Washington. But they all said, sir, it doesn't matter. We'll give you a flight an hour later. And indeed they did. But that ability to make no exceptions, that ability to understand that the tiniest fraction, when you lower your guard, is the time when thunder strikes and your vulnerability is revealed to all the world. So also when you are talking about fire or security, it is the level of alertness, the level of the systems you have put in place to ensure that everything works like clockwork each and every time. There is no scope to permit an event of that nature to actually happen. Look at our workplace. 12 years of my life I spent in Shastri Bhavan, the so-called Hall of Fame among the Bhavans of Rajpath in Delhi. Every year there is a fire, without exception. And I marvel at the way that even then we just move on in our regular chalta hai attitude. It doesn't matter. Somehow it just doesn't get into the psyche that that one flash of fire can consume the entire building. Look at the response factors. Suppose, even with all of your zero tolerance activity, still disaster strikes, then what? Then comes the response mechanism. How quick, how early, how immediate do you strike back? As you have a medical emergency and your heart stops, those first 10 minutes are the vital difference between life and death. So also with crises. We were taught as collectors in the field that when something happens in our district, when something goes wrong, the first person on the spot must be the collector. And I remember that in my own stint, those days we had no mobile phones. The telephone used to be next to my pillow night and day, 24/7, 365 days. It doesn't matter. Disaster doesn't perceive a Sunday or a Saturday. It doesn't perceive night or day. It strikes when you are least prepared. And we see each time that when disaster strikes, it is for you to learn the lessons from it. We ask ourselves, did we do the fire audit right? I ask the administration, if you are running this organization, when was your last fire drill? What is the level of awareness of your employees as to what they should do when the alarm rings, when the smoke detector goes? And always the answer is, well, sir, you know, some people move out, some people come in, some guys know the drill, some guys don't know. We tell them 1,000,000 times, nobody bothers. That will not do. Every one of you sitting here, every delegate in this conference understands that the level of dissemination of awareness is one of the keys to establish the fact that your response time, your zero tolerance, your ability to tackle are all on the right track. We can talk about technology being of assistance to us, and certainly when you talk of green and tech, tech is there as a tool. But tech by itself is of no value. It's the utilization of that technology to serve humankind in the necessities that we want, that the value of technology grows and develops. And therefore, ladies and gentlemen, at this conference today, this evening, as I give away these awards to those deserving of you who have come here, my heartiest congratulations. But my one advice to you is, never, never let your guard down. Congratulations and thank you.